if a person has a big investment in an idea, it's very hard to let go.
Welcome back, Linda. And before we get you to look at the discussion through a neuroscience lens, what did you think of James and his passion for innovation?
I'm a big fan of James O'Loughlin. I watched the show and loved it. So his enthusiasm and his passion just comes through. And I think that's what was really engaging, even when he was on the program, the New Inventors, and he's, he was just so passionate about it. And so it's lovely. Yeah, I enjoyed it very much.
He's a performer, and I love that. When I asked him about comedy, he says he still gets to do comedy in his presentation and talks, and he's a very engaging speaker. He's great to listen to. But from a neuroscience point of view, what did you pick up when you were watching that interview? What sort of messages or key points did you pick up on?
Look, there was so many, Dave, and but I think one of the things he started off by saying is that we can all learn to be innovative, and I really agree with that. I think that innovation is something that we can not so much learn, but relearn, because I actually think we're born innovative. So think about when you were a baby. Now, one of the things that babies do is they learn to crawl and then they learn to walk. And I can remember watching my children, putting their hands on the table and then standing up. Now, children, if they weren't innovative from a really early age, they would fail at learning to walk, and they just go, well, that's a bit too hard, so I think I'll just be carried around and crawl around for the rest of my life. So we are born innovative. We are born to experiment and try new things. I think what happens over time is that we get these messages that tell us only certain people are creative and innovative, which is simply not the case. It's that we kind of lose that curiosity and that willingness to try things and fail at them. So yeah, that was one of the things that initially struck me when he was talking about that. And so it's really kind of tapping back into your inner child, if you like, and being curious and being willing to experiment and to make mistakes and to fail.
It's interesting that you bring up that point, because he does talk about in his book, Innovation, A State of Mind, about children and play and how children invent games. And also one of my great heroes, Edward de Bono, one of our great creative thinkers, he goes down that same path about inventing new games and new ways to play. So how do we get in touch with our inner child? Like he did talk a bit about ways that you can get adults in the workplace to actually engage more with innovation. What was your take on that?
I really liked how he talked about not trying to bite off really big, hairy, giant projects, really thinking about it becoming an everyday habit. And we know that the brain is an energy conserving organ. So we've got to be convinced that it's going to be worth our effort to invest the scarce resources, our energy, into trying new things. And I guess one of the things that he talked about that I really love, because I've seen this in lots of organisations, is they have a innovation day or an innovation month. And so what that tells to the brains of that organisation is, well, you only have to be innovative one day a month or for 1 month, instead of seeing it as something that is part of what we do every single day.
So that encouraging people to spend 5 minutes a day is one thing, but the bit that he probably caught me a little bit by surprise is when he talks about making innovation a KPI. And my initial thought was to have a bit of pushback on that, because is that something you can really have a KPI? But in terms of the workplace, there's a lot to be said for that accountability of saying this is your job.
Yeah, and I think that's what he was trying to say, is it should be part of everyone's job. And really, it is how we're born. So somewhere along the way, we unlearn how to do that. So it's really kind of bringing something back that is natural that we've done in the past. So, we do have some wiring in place about how to do that. But yeah, that it becomes something that's expected, not something out of the norm. And, KPIs, I prefer to look at it as a key focus intention. So one of my key focus intentions that I'll need to report on is is how I've been paying attention to innovation, and whether, you know, something that you try works or doesn't work, it doesn't really matter. It's that you're actually trying that. And I've worked with organisations that have done this, and it's been quite extraordinary to see the difference. I think the key thing that I've seen in organisations is don't tell people how to do it. Let people work out how they're going to do it themselves, so that you don't kind of generate an autonomy threat in people. But yeah, I think it, you know, we hear time and time again, come on, we need to be innovative, we need to be creative. Well, let's link it with some measures and some habits that we develop, because I think that's the other thing he talked a lot about was how do we make this a habit so that we just engage in it without kind of going, oh, right, okay, it's innovation time. We actually just do it in a natural, spontaneous way.
He does say that bad ideas do happen, but it's important to fail quickly and to fail cheaply, to call those out. What from a psychological context, what are the dangers with bad ideas?
Some of the dangers with bad ideas, if a person has a big investment in an idea, it's very hard to let go of that idea. So that fight to be right kind of kicks in, and we don't want to be seen as failing, really. None of us want to be seen by others as, you know, in a poor light. So sometimes people can hang on and flog an idea for far too long. And so I guess what he was saying is, you know, be strategic and actually think about how you allocate resources to that. And that fits with how the brain operates as well. If we give permission for people to, you know, be able to challenge each other. And I guess you can only do this when there's high levels of psychological safety, where you can actually say, hey, Dave, I think we've really given this idea a go, and I'm not sure it's going to pan out, and you're not going to be, you know, you'll accept that, and you kind of go, yep, fair enough, and you move on. So it's when people work in quite silo-like manner as well. So they've come up with the idea in total isolation, so there's a lot invested in it, and then they share it, and not everyone's as enthusiastic as they are about the idea. So sometimes it's nice to, early on when you're coming up with an idea, share it with other people and test it out, and that will also give you an indication of whether it's worth investing your precious time and resources into exploring that idea further.
I'd like to take that exercise of 3 minutes to come up with an idea. I'd like to take that exercise one step further to prove my point that there's no such thing as a bad idea, by giving those ideas, swapping them, and telling the person who's received the idea to turn that into a good idea. Because I think when you're under a bit of pressure, that's where all the really good ideas seem to happen under the most pressure. And it's not necessarily so much the incentive, but having that goal. And I know Edward de Bono does talk too about getting rid of obstacles like boundaries so that you can be more creative. But he also talks about imposing boundaries, and you have to come up with something creative within a very strict, because that can also help creativity. So I'd love to give the worst idea you could possibly come up with and give it to somebody and say, how do you turn that into a good idea? Because I'm sure there's something there.
Well, I think that was in line with what he was talking about, that some people see problems, other people see opportunities. And I think that links with growth mindset or fixed mindset. So Carol Dweck's work, where when you have a growth mindset, you know, you are more open to looking at new things, trying new things, and making mistakes. The other thing I want to, it kind of links with the bad idea, and this is what I see so much in organisations, is someone will say, well, maybe we should try this, and then you've got someone goes, oh, we've already tried that and it didn't work. Now, most people get a bit frustrated and upset when that person says that, you know, like, oh, they're just, you know, they're not on board. Instead of actually seeing that that's a really valuable memory and resource to tap into. So instead of going, well, you know, let's just try it anyway, say, well, you've tried it before, so you've got a whole pile of knowledge about what didn't work. So we really want to hear what didn't work so we don't make the same mistakes again. Now, what that does from a brain perspective is it actually means that that person feels some significance, and, you know, that there's people caring about what I think, rather than shutting them down, in which case then they shut down, they hunker down, they don't share this valuable knowledge, because it could be that they have seen something not work and you don't want to make that mistake again. But it might also be, well, what if we made sure that we took into account that and tried something a little bit new here? What do you think you could do now that you didn't try back then? So it engages people in that process as well.
So what I hear you saying is if you can take into account how the brain works and what other people might be thinking, you can unlock all kinds of things.
Absolutely. You can unlock hidden creativity and that innovation. I think we don't do it enough. We don't spend time in reflection in organisations. I think that's a massive problem. We just go from one project to the next without actually going, what worked, what didn't work, and what can we do differently next time? 3 really simple, basic questions that can save your whole world of hurt into the future and pain.
So did you pick up any other nuggets or things to talk about in the process of that interview?
I think the big takeaway from that interview with James is about how you make this a habit. And we can have a great intention. You can listen to what James said. You can hear what we've been talking about and go, yeah, I want to build that as a habit. You actually have to have a habit implementation plan. So build a plan, and actually put it in your diary. When are you going to do that 5 minutes of innovation? Have little what we call nudges and cues that keep your attention focused on that. So, it might be that you have a couple of reminders on Post-it notes or whatever to say, are you adopting an innovation mindset? So I think that's the key thing. He's really talking about it as a mindset. And so rather than let's just do what we've always done mindset, it's well, how can we try and do things differently? How can we make this a habit? That was the big takeaway for me, I think.